This isn't laziness. It's an unhealed mind. Let's get real for a moment. You ever sit there staring at the ceiling, knowing you've got potential that could change your whole life? But somehow, you can't even get out of bed. You've got visions of success in your head. Maybe it's launching that business, finishing that book, transforming your body, or becoming the best version of yourself. But you scroll, you binge, you stall, you wait. And then comes the guilt. I'm just lazy, you tell yourself. But what if I told you you're not lazy? Carl Jung didn't believe in laziness as we define it. He believed in psychic blocks. He believed in the disconnection from the self, that when you're not doing what you're meant to do, it's not because you don't care. It's because something inside you is scared to death of what would happen if you actually did. This isn't lack of motivation. This is psychic paralysis, a defense mechanism of the unconscious mind, a built-in emergency brake pulling you away from anything that might force you to look deeper. Because if you really chased those dreams, if you really stepped into your power, you'd have to face the things you've buried, the insecurities, the inner child that was told it wasn't good enough, the trauma you've tried to outrun for years, the fear of being seen, truly seen. So no, this isn't laziness, this is a soul-level lockdown, and the only way out is into the depths of your mind, into the places you've been avoiding, because the truth is, the life you want isn't being held back by your schedule. It's being held hostage by your unhealed wounds. Chapter 1. The task isn't too big. Your shadow is. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Let that land, because you're not lazy. You're not weak. You're not just procrastinating. You're carrying something deeper, something darker, something you didn't even choose. What you're facing isn't just a to-do list. It's not a workout. It's not a writing session. It's not that one dream project you've been putting off. What you're actually up against is your shadow. The parts of you that were told, you're not good enough. You'll never make it. You're too much. Don't try, you'll just fail. These voices didn't come from nowhere. They came from your past, from the teacher who humiliated you, from the parent who never saw you, from the moment your heart broke and you decided it was safer to shrink. So now you scroll, not because you're lazy, but because starting means feeling again. Writing that book, it's not just words, it's the fear of being judged, of not being perfect, of people laughing or worse, ignoring. Going to the gym, it's not just reps, it's confronting the shame you've carried in silence, the way you learn to hide instead of heal, trying something new. It's not about skill, it's about the echoes of people who said, "You're not smart enough." And part of you believed them, so you stall. You self-sabotage, not because you don't care, but because part of you is terrified that maybe they were right. That's not laziness. That's unprocessed trauma in disguise. That's your nervous system whispering, "Stay safe, stay small, stay hidden." But here's the truth. You are not your shadow, you're not the fear, you're not the story you inherited. You are the one who can rewrite it. But only if you dare to face it. So the next time you catch yourself delaying, avoiding, distracting, don't call yourself lazy. Call yourself incomplete, unfinished, unhealed. And then do the most courageous thing of all. Begin anyway, with fear in your lungs and truth in your heart. Because your future doesn't live in comfort. It lives in the parts of you you've been too scared to meet. This isn't just about doing the work. This is about becoming the one who no longer runs from it. Chapter 2. The Power of Micro-Actions. The ego hates small steps. Let's destroy a myth right now. The idea that your life will change in one big moment is a lie. The ego feeds you that lie every day. It tells you, unless you can do it perfectly, don't even try. It wants the entire book written, not just one sentence. It wants the dream body, not one walk around the block. It wants 1 million views, not one honest post. Because the ego is obsessed with one thing, extremes, all or nothing, now or never, perfect or pointless. But Carl Jung knew better. He understood that real transformation doesn't explode, it unfolds. It emerges from the quiet, consistent friction between who you are and who you're becoming. And that friction? It's in the micro-actions, the small, sacred, consistent decisions that feel insignificant. but aren't. You see, when you take one small step, you don't just move forward, you reclaim power from the unconscious mind. Every micro-action says, I am no longer controlled by the old script. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need permission to heal. Because here's the truth. The ego wants applause. But the soul wants alignment. And you don't need to do something massive to heal. You just need to do something true. Like what? Write one honest sentence. Drink one glass of water with presence. Get out of bed and make it with intention. Speak kindly to yourself, even if your voice shakes. These seem small, but they're atomic in the soul. Because each small act rewrites something ancient in your nervous system. Something that said, you're a failure. You'll never change. You're broken. But when you move even a little, you tell that voice, you don't control me anymore. And suddenly, you're not just surviving, you're rewriting your identity. So don't underestimate the power of one step. Because the greatest transformations don't look like thunder. They look like choosing not to give up today. They look like saying, this one tiny act will be my rebellion against every lie I was told. And that's not just a micro-action. That's a revolution. Chapter 3. Build rituals, not routines. Let's stop pretending your life will change by copying a billionaire's morning routine off a YouTube video. Because here's the truth. Routines may fill your calendar, but rituals, they fill your soul. Carl Jung didn't believe in robotic repetition. He believed in symbolic living. He saw every action as an expression of the psyche, every moment as a mirror of the unconscious. So what happens when you reduce your day to mechanical tasks? You lose your power. You disconnect from meaning. You become a machine, going through the motions but never feeling the motion. But rituals, they're different. A ritual is intentional. A ritual is sacred. A ritual tells your unconscious mind, this moment matters. This isn't just survival. This is transformation. Drinking water in the morning? That's not a health hack. That's a cleansing ceremony. A symbolic act that says, today I wash away the energy of yesterday. Putting on your shoes? That's not just prepping to leave the house. That's a signal to the psyche. We are stepping into something new. Lighting a candle? Meditating for 1 minute? Speaking a single affirmation? These aren't small, they're portals, gateways into your higher self. Because here's what most people don't understand. You don't rise by stacking productivity hacks. You rise by aligning your actions with your inner truth. When your habits are empty, your energy is empty. But when your habits are sacred, your identity shifts. This is spiritual neuroscience. Your unconscious mind doesn't respond to logic. It responds to symbols, to emotion, to ritual. So stop saying, I'll wake up at 5 a.m. because millionaires do it. Say, I'll rise with the sun because today is a new chapter of my becoming. Stop saying, I'll go to the gym because I hate my body. Say, I'll move my body to honor the vessel that carries my purpose. Because the energy behind your action becomes the emotion you associate with your identity. You're not here to be efficient. You're here to be enchanted by your own life again. So build rituals, sacred water to cleanse, sacred silence to hear yourself, sacred breath to center, sacred movement to embody your power, sacred words to remind your unconscious, I am becoming. This isn't about doing more, it's about doing differently. You don't need a perfect planner, you need a sacred intention. Because the soul doesn't awaken through force, it awakens through ritualized reverence. Make your life holy again. Chapter 4, Best Rule 2-Minute Rule, Jung's Theory in Action. You've heard it before, just start even if it's for 2 minutes. Sounds like a casual productivity hack, right? But what if I told you it's spiritual warfare? What if I told you that buried beneath this simple trick is a deep, almost mystical layer of Carl Jung's psychology? See, the ego thrives on perfectionism. It wants everything to be massive, impressive, insta-worthy. The ego says, if you don't do an hour of reading, it doesn't count. If you don't go to the gym for 90 minutes, why bother? If you can't build the whole empire today, then stay in bed. But Jung would call this exactly what it is, self-sabotage masquerading as ambition. Because behind every all-or-nothing mindset is a deeper fear, the fear of truly beginning. Because once you begin, something shifts. You bypass the ego's fortress, and you awaken something deeper, the self. The self, as Jung described, is not the mask you wear in public. It's not your resume. It's not your productivity tracker. It is your true center, your higher guide, the part of you that remembers why you're here even when you forget. And the 2-minute rule? It's how you open the door to that self, because once you take action, even for just 2 minutes, you disarm resistance. You interrupt the story that says, I can't, I'm not ready, it's too late. And suddenly your identity begins to shift, not through pressure, but through proof. Read 1 page, you're now a reader. Do 2 minutes of breathwork, you've honored your nervous system. Write a single paragraph, you're no longer dreaming, you're creating. And the ego? It doesn't know how to fight small sacred momentum. It thrives in extremes, and but 2 minutes, it can't stop you once you start. Here's the Jungian twist. Your unconscious doesn't care how long you act. It only cares what identity you're rehearsing. So when you take a micro-action, you're not building a habit. You're initiating a new archetype within you. You're saying, I am no longer the victim of my excuses. I am the author of a new story. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And the 2-minute rule, that's not just a trick, that's your invitation to become. So the next time your mind says, it's not enough, don't bother, you say back, this isn't about enough. This is about alignment. This is about becoming. Because the soul doesn't measure minutes, it measures meaning. And if 2 minutes brings you closer to your authentic self, that's not small, that's sacred. Chapter 5. Your laziness is a symbol. Interpret it. Let's destroy a toxic belief that's been crushing souls in silence, that you're lazy, that you're undisciplined, that you just need to try harder. But what if I told you, laziness isn't the disease, it's the symptom? And Carl Jung would agree, because Jung didn't believe in random behaviors. He believed in symbols. He believed that everything, from your dreams to your dysfunctions, was a message from the unconscious mind. So when you feel unmotivated, when your body refuses to move, when your brain fogs up and your soul feels heavy, stop shaming yourself. Start interpreting. Because that laziness you hate so much, it's not your enemy. It's your inner compass trying to whisper what your conscious mind won't admit. Maybe your lack of energy isn't because you're broken, but because what you're working on doesn't align with your soul. Maybe the real message isn't, I don't want to work. Maybe it's, I don't want to work on something that feels meaningless. There's a big difference between being tired and being spiritually starved. Your soul isn't lazy, it's malnourished. It's been surviving on empty tasks, shallow goals, and hollow to-do lists. It's been drowned in distractions and buried under expectations. And now it's screaming, I want meaning, I want depth, I want purpose. But we've been trained to ignore that cry. We're told to hustle harder, push more, sleep less, grind until the burnout becomes a badge of honor. But Jung warned us, if you ignore the symbols, the psyche will find louder ways to get your attention. Through anxiety, through depression, through numbness. Your laziness isn't rebellion. It's a red flag. A smoke signal rising from the fire of an unlived life. And it's asking, why are you so busy doing things that don't matter to you? Why are you forcing yourself into lives that aren't yours? Why are you performing instead of living? So next time you catch yourself frozen, unmotivated, stuck, don't just power through. Pause, go inward, ask, what am I doing that drains me? What part of me is going unheard? What is my resistance trying to protect me from? Because behind every lazy moment is a story. And behind that story is a truth you're scared to admit. Maybe your soul is tired of chasing goals it never agreed to. Maybe your inner child is still waiting for you to listen. Maybe the problem isn't your discipline, it's your disconnection. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you're not avoiding anymore. You're interpreting. You're awakening. You're choosing meaning over mindless motion. So here's your mission. Start doing what matters. Not what's trendy. Not what's expected. Not what just makes you look productive. Do what makes you feel alive. Because that's not laziness. That's alignment. You're not lazy. You're misaligned. Take a deep breath. Because you've been carrying a weight that was never yours. You've called yourself lazy, weak, unmotivated, but none of those labels are true. You were never lazy. You were disconnected. You were never broken, just misaligned. Carl Jung didn't just give us tools for the mind, he gave us permission to face our soul, to turn toward the darkness, to ask, what is this trying to show me? Instead of running from your resistance, he dared us to listen to it. Because your resistance, it's not sabotage, it's guidance, it's the sacred voice inside you saying, this path isn't you. This pressure isn't real. This pain has a message. So stop punishing yourself for feeling stuck. Stop calling yourself lazy because you paused. Start asking deeper questions. What if your exhaustion is wisdom? What if your boredom is a compass? What if your soul is begging you to stop performing and start becoming? Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's one quiet act of rebellion against everything false. So here's your challenge, not from a coach but from your higher self. Break the task into one sacred step. Create one tiny ritual that honors your effort. Do something honest for just 2 minutes that aligns with who you truly are. It doesn't have to look impressive. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Because you don't rise by grinding harder. You rise by remembering who you are, beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, beneath the performance. And if the only thing you do today is this, if the only action you take is typing these words below, I'm not lazy, I'm awakening, then this wasn't just a video. This was a funeral for the version of you that kept pretending, and a rebirth of the version that's finally ready to come alive. Because from this moment on, you're not waiting, you're not hiding, you're not apologizing, you're awakening. Chapter 6. Procrastination is a defense mechanism, not a character flaw. Let's clear something up once and for all. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not a failure because you keep putting things off. You are wounded. And procrastination? That's not proof of your weakness. It's proof of your unconscious mind doing its job. Carl Jung taught us something revolutionary. That the unconscious doesn't just store repressed trauma. It actively protects you, even if it means holding you back. So when you procrastinate, it's not because you're broken. It's because your unconscious has identified the task as a threat to your identity, a threat to your emotional safety, a threat to the story you've clung to in order to feel safe in a dangerous world. You want to write that book, but deep down, your mind remembers the time you were laughed at in school. You want to start that business, but your body still remembers the sting of failure. You want to love again, but your nervous system is haunted by the pain of betrayal. So your unconscious steps in and whispers, "Don't do it. It's not safe. You're better off waiting." That's not laziness. That's trauma dressed as hesitation. That's your inner child pulling you away from the fire it once got burned by. But here's the brutal truth. What protected you back then is now poisoning your future. Because safety isn't the goal anymore. Expansion is, growth, healing, becoming. And the mind doesn't care about growth. It cares about patterns. It cares about survival. And it will recreate old comfort zones even if they're slowly suffocating you. So what do? You stop fighting your procrastination. You stop calling it failure. You start seeing it as a messenger. Ask it, what are you afraid of? What story are you still believing? What pain are you protecting me from? Because once you name the fear, you take away its power. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You don't need more pressure. You need more compassion. You need to remind your inner child, we're not in danger anymore. We're not that powerless little kid anymore. We're not here to hide. We're here to rise. Procrastination isn't a problem. It's a portal. And the moment you stop judging it, you start learning from it. You begin the real journey, the journey from protection to liberation. Chapter 7. The inner child doesn't want to work. He wants to be loved. Let's drop the illusion. You think you're lazy. But what if the truth is, you're not unmotivated. You're unloved. Not by the world, but by the child within you. Behind every unproductive adult is a scared inner child. A child who wasn't praised unless they performed. a child who learned that love was conditional, that their worth was tied to grades, achievements, and good behavior. And now, that child still lives in you. So when you sit down to work, when you open the laptop, when you stare at the to-do list, when you try to grind your way to worthiness, that child panics. He whispers, "What if I fail again? What if I'm still not enough? What if they still don't love me, even if I give it my all?" And suddenly your body freezes. You call it procrastination, but it's not. It's self-protection. It's a wounded inner child slamming on the brakes, because he's terrified that working hard will still lead to rejection. Carl Jung would say, this isn't a productivity problem. This is a shadow problem. The lazy part of you isn't lazy. It's a symbol of an unhealed emotional reality. Your inner child doesn't want hustle. He wants to be held. He doesn't want another goal. He wants to hear, "You are already enough, even if you do nothing today." Because true healing doesn't begin with pressure. It begins with permission. Permission to rest, permission to exist, permission to be imperfect and still be lovable. And when you finally turn inward, when you close your eyes and whisper to that small trembling voice within you, "I see you. I hear you. I love you." Everything changes, because you don't rise by force. You rise by reparenting. You rise by reminding the little one inside, we're not in danger anymore. We're not being judged. We're safe now. And that's when the magic happens. You don't get up to prove your worth anymore. You get up to honor your healing. You move, not out of fear, but out of love. That is how you break the cycle. That is how you rise, not like a machine, but like a soul finally coming home to itself. Chapter 8. Your body isn't tired. Your spirit is exhausted. Let's say the thing no one says out loud. You're not tired because you didn't sleep enough. You're not drained because you didn't drink enough coffee. You're not lazy because you skipped the gym. You're tired because you've been carrying the weight of a life that was never yours. You feel it when you wake up and sigh before your feet even hit the floor. You feel it in the silence between tasks. You feel it in the dull ache behind your eyes when no one's looking. And still you judge yourself. You tell yourself, I need more discipline. I need to push harder. I need to be stronger. But what if the problem isn't discipline? What if the problem is disconnection? Carl Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And that pain you're feeling? It's the pain of living out of alignment, of waking up every day to play a character in a life that doesn't reflect your soul. You've been grinding toward goals you don't even care about, working jobs that crush your spirit, smiling in places that silence your truth, saying I'm fine when every cell in your body is screaming, I'm not. You're not tired because you did too much. You're tired because you did too little of what sets your soul on fire. You weren't born to check boxes. You weren't born to live in survival mode. You weren't born to chase someone else's dream. And when your body slows down, when your energy crashes, when you just can't force another fake smile or fake step forward, that's not weakness. That's truth, breaking through the illusion. Jung taught us that the unconscious doesn't stay silent forever. It will speak. And if you don't listen to the whispers, it will scream. It will scream through exhaustion, depression, anxiety, apathy. Your spirit isn't broken. It's starving. Starving for authenticity. Starving for alignment. Starving to build a life that feels like home. So stop calling it laziness. Call it what it is. Misalignment fatigue, soul-deep burnout, spiritual resistance, and start asking the deeper questions. What part of me have I betrayed to keep the peace? What version of life have I been living to be accepted? What dream have I abandoned to feel safe? Because the more you pretend, the more tired you'll feel. But here's the shift. You don't have to burn your life down overnight. You just have to take one real step back to your truth. One decision rooted in alignment. One moment of listening to your soul instead of your schedule. Because true energy, it doesn't come from caffeine. It comes from clarity, from waking up and realizing this is my life, and I refuse to live it half alive. Like you're not lazy, you're awakening, you're shedding the false self. And in that sacred exhaustion, a new self is being born. Chapter 9. The death of the false self is where energy returns. There comes a point in your journey where you're not just tired, you feel drained at the soul level. You try to push, You try to force. You open your laptop, your notebook, your heart, and nothing moves. You tell yourself you're lazy. You say you lack discipline. But what if that's not the truth? What if the real reason you feel stuck is because you're still performing as someone you no longer are? Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain, and that pain, it comes when the old self starts dying, but you're still clinging to its mask. You see, there's a version of you that was built in survival, the overachiever who learned to win love through success, the silent one who stayed quiet to avoid conflict, the perfectionist who hid their flaws just to feel safe. These identities, they weren't false because you were fake. They were false because they were strategies, not truth. But now, you've outgrown them, and trying to keep them alive is exhausting your soul. Laziness isn't your problem. Pretending is. Every time you fake a smile, and every time you chase goals that don't light you up, every time you try to fit into a life that doesn't fit your spirit, you lose energy, not just physical energy. You lose vital life force, because energy doesn't come from motivation. It comes from authenticity. And when you're aligned with who you really are, you don't need willpower. You move naturally. You create with ease. You breathe differently. But here's the hard part Jung warned us about. Before you reclaim your energy, you have to bury the mask. You have to grieve the identity that once kept you safe. You have to let go of the ego that says, "Don't change. They won't love the real you." You have to allow parts of you to die, not because they were wrong, but because they're no longer you. This is the real work. This is the painful shedding. This is where the ego fights hardest, because it knows what's coming. Freedom. And freedom is terrifying to the part of you that was built in chains. But every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you speak when you used to stay silent, every time you move in alignment with your soul, you chip away at that false self. And what happens? Energy returns, clarity returns, peace returns, power returns, not because you became someone new, but because you finally stopped pretending. This is not self-improvement. This is self-reclamation. You're not here to become someone. You're here to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you feel tired, numb, resistant, don't push harder. Go deeper, because the moment you bury the false self and you resurrect the real one, and that's where your true energy lives. Chapter 10. The world doesn't need a perfect you, just a present you. You keep waiting, don't you? Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting for the fear to disappear, for the voice in your head to say, "Now you're worthy. Now you've earned the right to begin." But here's the truth. That moment never comes. And Carl Jung knew it, because the soul doesn't wait for perfection. The soul awakens through presence, through honesty, through raw, unfiltered, messy truth. You keep thinking you have to become someone before you take the first step, that you need to know your full purpose, that you need to heal every wound, master your mindset, and glow with confidence before you can even start. But Jung would say, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. That means you don't need to fix everything before you move. You don't need to be fearless to take the leap. You don't need to be certain to walk your path. You just need to show up, as you are, right now, confused, shaky, half-healed, imperfect. Because that version of you, that's the one that holds the most power. Every step you take while feeling broken is a step toward becoming whole. Because it's easy to act when everything is clear. It's easy to perform when you're confident. It's easy to move when you've got it all figured out. But the real growth, the real transformation, happens when you walk through the fog, when you speak, even while trembling, when you try, even after failing, when you show up, even when you feel like hiding. That's what Jung meant when he said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because accepting yourself as you are right now, that is what makes you powerful. Not just the bright parts, but the afraid parts, the uncertain parts, the still healing parts. The world doesn't need a perfect you. The world needs a present you, a real you, a breathing, feeling, soul-awakened version of you that no longer performs but lives. So no, don't wait to be ready. Don't wait for the fear to fade. Don't wait for permission. Start now with the version of you that exists today, because she or he is already enough. Stop aiming for flawless. Aim for honest, aim for here, aim for now, because your real power, it was never in your polish, it was in your presence. And when you finally show up as you truly are, the world doesn't just accept you, it recognizes you. It says, there you are, we've been waiting. Bonus chapter. You're not behind, you're being prepared. You scroll through life thinking you're late, behind, off track. You compare your timeline to people online. They look happy, they look successful, they look like they've figured it out. And then there's you, still unsure, still healing, still trying to find your footing in a world that never made space for your pain. But let's rewrite this narrative, right now. Because Carl Jung didn't believe in late. He believed in synchronicity, in sacred timing, in the idea that the soul has its own calendar, and it's never wrong. What you're calling delay might actually be divine preparation. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're being fortified. Maybe the silence isn't punishment, it's construction. Maybe the waiting isn't wasted. It's weaving the strength you'll need later. Because your journey isn't just about success. It's about becoming someone who can carry that success without losing themselves. And that takes time, that takes fire, that takes loneliness. That takes layers of ego being peeled off until what remains is real. So stop comparing your journey to someone else's highlight reel. Stop letting the illusion of speed define your worth. Your soul isn't on a deadline, it's on a mission. Every time you didn't get what you wanted, you got what you needed to grow. Every time the door closed, it redirected you to a path more aligned. Every heartbreak refined your compassion. Every failure crushed your pride so your purpose could breathe. You're not behind. You're on the path of depth, not just distance, so breathe. Trust the timing. And if you're still in the dark, maybe you're not being buried, you're being planted. And when it's time, you won't just grow, you'll rise. Bonus chapter 2. Your fear of failure is actually a fear of being seen. Let's be real. You keep telling yourself you're afraid to fail. That's why you haven't started. That's why your ideas sit in your notes app instead of the real world. That's why every time an opportunity rises, something inside you shuts down. But here's the uncomfortable truth you've avoided for years. It's not failure that terrifies you. It's being seen. Seen in your rawness. Seen in your imperfection. Seen in your attempts, before they're polished and perfect. You say, what if I fail? But what you're really asking is, what if I give it everything and they still don't love me? Because if you never try, you can still pretend. Pretend you had potential. Pretend you could have done it. If only. But the moment you show up fully, you risk the deepest fear of all, rejection of your true self. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege comes with a price. You have to step out from behind the mask. And that mask, it's been protecting you for years. It kept you safe when they judged you in school. It helped you survive in a family that only valued perfection. It helped you fit in by hiding the parts of you that felt too much or not enough. But now, that same mask is suffocating you. Because you've outgrown hiding. You've outgrown pretending. You're not meant to be liked by everyone. You're meant to be real. And realness, that's where fear creeps in. That's where your hands shake before you hit publish. That's where your voice cracks when you speak your truth. That's where your heart races wondering, can I survive their silence? Their criticism? Their misunderstanding? Yes, you can. Because your soul isn't fragile, it's just awakening. You're not afraid to fail. You're afraid to be seen trying and not being validated for it. But that fear, it doesn't go away by avoiding the stage. It goes away by stepping onto it anyway. Not because you're fearless, but because you've decided to be free. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need you to stop abandoning yourself. Jung would tell you, the journey to the self isn't about applause, it's about integration. Bringing the hidden parts of you into the light, even if they're shaky, even if they're messy, even if the world doesn't clap. So stop hiding behind the excuse of failure. You're not scared of losing. You're scared of being exposed and not being loved for it. But here's the final truth. The moment you love yourself, even when no one claps. You become unshakable. Because the real win isn't perfection. It's presence, it's showing up anyway, it's creating anyway, it's speaking, even when your voice trembles. Let them see you, let them judge you, and rise anyway. Because on the other side of that fear is freedom. Bonus Chapter 3. Perfectionism is fear dressed as discipline. You say you're a perfectionist, that you have high standards, that you don't want to release your work until it's flawless, that it's just not ready yet. But deep down, you know that's not the whole truth. Because Carl Jung taught us to look beneath the mask, to ask, what am I really protecting myself from? And when you look closely, perfectionism isn't about excellence. It's about fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being seen as ordinary, flawed, human. So you polish endlessly, you tweak, you delay, you rewrite the sentence 20 times and still feel unsure. You say it's about quality, but really, it's about control. Because if you release something imperfect, you risk rejection, you risk vulnerability, you risk being exposed. But if you keep it in progress, you stay safe. You can hide behind the excuse, it could have been great, I just didn't finish it. Carl Jung would say, that's not discipline. That's your shadow in disguise. You don't fear failure. You fear being seen trying. You fear people witnessing your process, your flaws, your almost but not quite. But let's get honest. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your presence. No one's waiting for a flawless you. They're waiting for a real you, an honest voice, a messy attempt, a raw truth. Because perfection isn't relatable. But courage is magnetic. When you show up as you are, not polished but powerful in your honesty, that's when energy flows, that's when people listen, that's when you feel free. So next time you hear that voice say, wait until it's perfect, translate it. It's fear saying, please don't risk being seen, and you respond, I'm not here to be perfect, I'm here to be real. Because discipline isn't about delay, it's about devotion, to truth, to movement, to expression. Release the need to impress. Replace it with the desire to impact. Your power isn't in perfect timing, it's in imperfect momentum. So write the post, start the video, say the thing, show your work, be witnessed, and let the fear burn in the fire of your boldness. Because in the end, perfection dies in silence, but authenticity, it echoes. Bonus Chapter 4. You don't lack discipline, you lack connection. Let's stop repeating the lie. You don't lack motivation, you don't lack discipline. You're not just lazy, you lack connection. Connection to your purpose, connection to your values, connection to the real reason you ever wanted to begin in the first place. Carl Jung didn't believe people failed because they lacked willpower. He believed they got lost because they were disconnected from the self. And when you lose connection with the self, you lose energy, you lose meaning, you lose momentum. Because discipline doesn't grow in pressure, it grows in alignment. You're not tired because you can't focus. You're tired because everything you're focusing on feels hollow, uninspired, disconnected from your soul. You've been told, wake up earlier. Do it anyway. Discipline equals freedom. But Jung would say, no amount of forcing will ever replace the fire of real connection. Let's get brutally honest. Are you waking up for a life you actually believe in? Are you chasing goals that matter to you, or ones that were assigned by culture, family, or fear? Are you building someone else's dream and calling it ambition? Because you can build the perfect system, track every habit, optimize your productivity, and still feel completely empty. Why? Because without emotional connection, discipline becomes a cage. You're not living, you're complying, you're not flowing, you're forcing, you're not growing, you're grinding. And here's what no one tells you. You don't need more rules, you need reconnection, you need to remember, why did you start? What do you deeply care about? What kind of life would feel like love, not labor? When your actions align with your essence, discipline becomes devotion. You stop needing motivation, because the work itself becomes sacred, not because it's always easy, but because it finally feels true. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But not you. Not anymore. You're done avoiding. You're done pretending. You're ready to make soul-based decisions, not survival-based ones. Because when you reconnect with your truth, your values, your purpose, your discipline returns. Not as a punishment, but as a privilege. You get to show up. You get to build something real. You get to move from integrity, not insecurity. You don't need more shame, you need more meaning. And once you find that, the fire never leaves again. This wasn't just a video. It was a soul awakening. Let's not lie to ourselves. You didn't just watch this video. You didn't consume content. You confronted something. In your body, in your memories, in the sacred, silent places you don't let anyone see. That moment where you almost cried, that wasn't weakness, that was truth breaking through the noise. This wasn't just pixels and audio. This was a mirror held up to the version of you that's been waiting to be seen. The one that's been called lazy, unmotivated, lost, when in reality, you were just carrying pain with no place to go. This video wasn't content. It was a confrontation with the part of you that dimmed your light, with the dreams you quietly buried because the world told you they were too much, with the false self that wore a smile while dying inside, with the real you, the one that never stopped hoping, even in silence. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And today you did something terrifying. You faced yourself. So now what? You scroll to the next distraction. Let the algorithm erase what your soul just remembered. Or, do you claim the version of you that just woke up? Because that version, the one who saw through the lies, the one who realized they're not lazy, just wounded, the one who finally felt seen, that version deserves to live. So here's your call. If this video shook you, even just 1%, don't let it pass by. Don't let it become just another moment. Type this in the comments right now. I'm not lazy, I'm finally healing. Not for views, not for likes, but as a sacred declaration that this chapter of your life changed something. That from this day forward, you don't need to perform. You don't need to prove, you just need to come home to yourself. And if you're done with shallow content, if you're done watching videos that entertain but never awaken, subscribe, join us. Because this isn't a channel, this is a movement, a community, a soul space for the ones who were never seen, but never stopped searching. This isn't for the fake. This isn't for the numb. This is for the ones who are ready to become everything their pain tried to bury. So let's rise. Together, one healing, one truth, one step at a time.